The first item of business is to adopt the agenda. Unless there are any comments, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is the meetings, the minutes from our April 18th meeting. I noticed a couple of minor items and unfortunately forgot my markup, but that's okay, I know where it was. On the bottom of page 7, two changes. Chairman Light pointed out that even if they allowed instead of the driving range in the new location, it should read the proposed change in the zoning ordinance. Then instead of driving range in the new location, the applicant, and then it continues, the applicant would still need to apply for, and I think it should have inserted, special exception approval. And then the next piece, the motion carried 7-0, actually belongs down after the next bullet where it says Mr. Byrd moved to schedule a public hearing, Ms. Miller seconded, and then it starts to say the motion carried, but it looks like the 7-0 part was inserted above instead of down below where it belongs. So those were the only two changes I saw for the minutes. Did anybody have any additional edits? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on then to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we'll have a general public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and then we'll have a public hearing as advertised on the proposed text amendments related to driving ranges. I'll note that you might wonder why we're not having a public hearing on the new business items, and this is a direct result of frankly our recognition of the language of our ordinance that has us first do a preliminary review of the applications in order to decide if a public hearing is warranted. So if you're wondering, in the past that has not been our practice, but that is how we will proceed going forward. So tonight we'll be looking at those, and you can feel free to comment on them during the public comment period, but we will not be holding hearings on each of those individual applications. We will only be deciding whether a hearing will be called for and advertised for our next meeting. And as always, I would ask that if you would like to make a public comment, that you identify yourself and either your address or your district, and please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And with that, I'll open the general public comment for tonight's meeting. Yes, Mr. Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Phil Irwin, Flint Hill. I'd like to take just a moment to address the general topic of signs. Signs are for two basic purposes: directions and identification. Signs for advertising should be discouraged as such. The biggest blight that we have in the state of Virginia, according to Scenic Virginia organization, are clear-cut corridors for transmission lines of all sorts and billboards. Anything that looks like a billboard just does not belong in the viewshed here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You can't tune out a billboard or a sign of any type. You have to see it going by. You don't have to look at it, but you have to know that it's there because it is. You can't tune it out like you can a radio or TV or internet and so forth. Signs should be for the purpose of advertising? No. Billboards? No, especially electronic billboards. We suggest that the ordinance could be strengthened a little bit here in Rappahannock County to take care of that issue, because we're trying to work on view sheds in the state of Virginia to make sure that they remain attractive for people who live here and for the visitors from elsewhere. Advertising, no. Directions and identification should be the purpose of the sign.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Tom John, Piedmont District. I'm going to make this commission mad. It's not my intentions to, but it's the same way, you know how you train a mule, don't you? You hit him upside the head with a 2x4. This commission's lack of doing anything over the last 10 years has led us to the way we are today. The reaction with Bill Fletcher's property could have been taken care of years ago with things passed in the zoning ordinance. Again, the zoning ordinance needs to go out to each one of the jurisdictions, have people comment on it. It needs to be changed. It's at the point that it needs to be changed. You need to take on public comment, go to each one of the districts, see what the people have to say about that. Your non-action on things has led to the next zoning event where you're doing spot zoning in the county. And that's the worst thing you can do, is spot zoning. Planning is planning. It's not reacting to Airbnbs, or it's not reacting to something else. It's planning. It takes a lot of effort. You now have a zoning administrator. We did it all years ago because I did sit on this commission for 12 years. I am a certified planner in Virginia. I wasn't put on the board for some reason. Maybe they dislike me. I don't care. Planning is planning. You now have a zoning administrator that can carry out those duties. It is getting crucial to Rappahannock County to do good planning in the next 5 to 10 years. It hasn't been done in the last 10 years. People sat on this board and have done nothing. They've reacted to things. They've reacted to the Airbnbs. I don't care what it is, they've reacted to it. Again, please take the ordinance out to the jurisdictions, and then you can develop a comprehensive plan from what the people tell you that they need or they want. They will tell you exactly what they need and want. Mike Massey started this going out to the different districts years ago. It was very beneficial. It was beneficial to the people because they got their say. It was less hassle to you because once people get their say, they're going to probably be quiet once you develop the ordinance. So please go out to each jurisdiction before you do this spot zoning all over the county. That's what you're up to right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Luthi from the Piedmont District. I live on Woodward Road in Sperryville. And my wife Sue and I own the 25 acres across from 794 Woodward Road, where there's a proposed cell tower to be erected. And I think most of you on the Planning Commission and also the board have received some emails from us. Hopefully, I know some of them came today. Hopefully you've had a chance to read them. We recommend that the application at this point should be denied. And just some highlights. CWS application states that our house, which is accessed by the driveway directly across from 794, faces the ridge line. Not true. We face the tower. We would face probably the top, easily 100 feet of the tower. With it pointing directly into our bedroom windows, living room windows, front porch that my daughter and her family love to sit on in the evenings. You know, I don't think CWS has even come up our driveway and taken a look at it. All they are doing is playing the game from, what was it, 5-6 years ago when AT&T came into the county with CWS. And even back then, they never once came up to our house to explore where we live and the impacts that would be done. And even when the balloon test was done back then, nobody came up. They say it's 800 feet away. Well, it's 800 feet from the bottom of our Pine Mountain. If you do simple mathematics, that's less than 800 feet directly across to our house. The visual impact would really be devastating to us. We feel that the tower would definitely lower the valuation of our property. The tower would become an eyesore for our house and destroy our view of the pasture lands looking, I guess that's eastward. And it's what we would like to compare it to is if you had two identical houses on two identical pieces of property, but on one of them there was a cell tower. Which one would sell the quickest? The one without the cell tower, and that's been shown in a lot of realtor magazines, realtor articles, realtor associations. Both my wife and I are retired on fixed incomes, so we rent our house at 793. We have the 25 acres there, which is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath house. And if a tower is erected there, that would hurt our chances of renting the property. If a person has a chance to rent the property and they see a cell tower there, chances are they would back out and look for something else. We feel that the county is, at this point, is taking the easy way out because this property had been once approved by the county. I think it was 5-6 years ago. This was done several years ago, but it was predicated on the fact that a pole would be installed at the high school because of line of sight. When the school board voted down the tower at the high school, that took away the chance of CWS building and AT&T coming into Woodward Road or onto Woodward Road because there was no line of sight. And they stressed that in the public hearings at the high school. You know, what has changed. What testing has been done since then by CWS to make sure this tower would work? Probably none. Again, they're taking the easy way out. They feel the county approved it 5 years ago, they're going to approve it again. Excuse me, I'm not a very good speaker here. CWS is not what I consider a communications company. They're an infrastructure company. All they do is build towers and hope that a communications company will come and put their antennas on the pole. We don't see that happening. What due diligence has been done by the county and by CWS since 5 years ago? None. Probably just mailed in an application, and that's what you're going to start looking at this evening. Some little research I did. There's approximately 26 people per square mile in the county, even less than the western edge of the county. 3,300 housing units, and there's a density of 12 housing units per square mile in the county.
Mr. Lutzy, if I could, we have your written comments. They're very detailed, and I would prefer that you try to keep your comments short. I'm being lenient, but we don't need to go through all of your written material.
Okay, well, then I'll close out by saying siting of the cell tower is an important function of the county officials. Protection of citizens' property rights and health should be foremost in the responsibilities of our local government. And we certainly hope that you take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Mr. Wesley, I've been up to your daughter's house there the first time that they applied for the permit. And I'm a little confused about where you live. Do you live in the same house with your daughter?
No, we live down about 200 feet away from there.
200 feet towards Berryville?
Just down the driveway, 200
That's
feet.
your house.
Same driveway?
Yeah, same driveway.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment this evening? Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment on the driving range and also the Luthi situation. Should I wait for the public hearing on the driving range? Or give it now?
You might as well wait, then you'll get a second 3 minutes.
Okay.
You do it that way. But do you mind, I mean, I know who you are, but do you mind?
Cynthia Price, Stonewall Hawthorne, I'm in your district, you're my representative.
Yes, I know who you are.
I'm against the cell tower there. I'm against CWS coming back into the county. I have met the person who owns CWS. I have met the person who owns Piedmont Broadband. I have to say, in my whole life, the worst people I've talked to or the worst experience has been wireless company presidents. Because they're arrogant. They don't want to hear, they don't want to consider things like the Luthy's house, they don't want to consider health effects. I know the Telecommunications Act says you're not supposed to consider it, but that's going to change. Right now, people are dying from glioma. That comes from cell phones. John McCain's one of them. That's going to change, and when it changes, it'll be like the cigarette thing that went on for decades and decades, and suddenly, everybody reversed and said, yes, cigarettes are dangerous. CWS has tried to come into this county 3 times. At the high school, there was a lawsuit about excessive secrecy in the contract and in the negotiations between John Lozinski and Tam Murray at CWS, who knew each other from years ago. The board voted that down. Then they tried to come into Flatwoods. Flatwoods is the public garbage disposal. Every member of the public on this side of the county uses it. I objected because I said, look, why should everybody have to throw their garbage away at the foot of a cell phone tower and get radiated? It's a public place everybody has to go to. I object. The way the county kept it out was they said you have to have signed contracts for everybody you're going to put on that tower, because they had none. And we will not consider that until you have your signed contracts. So that was how it was rejected. Now they're coming back in, and they have a tower they've built behind the Boston Post Office, or they're building, and they have no contracts. They have only Piedmont Broadband here, which is not a cell company. They have only Virginia Broadband in Boston, which is not a cell company. Piedmont Broadband is in a lawsuit with Rag Mountain right now, with Ron Maxwell, because he can't get out of his contract. It's a self-renewing contract. And what they want to do is transmit broadband from mountaintop to mountaintop, but it's these big transmitters. It's massive tree cutting. It's always adding more radiation, more transmitters. We don't need that. Did you read the paper? CenturyLink is bringing fiber to the home and DSL to the home on an expanded basis. They already have it to the top of Rag Mountain. You can get high-speed internet, fiber, the fastest. On the mountaintop there, all the way down the mountaintop, you do not need wireless broadband. You can get good phone, you can get TV. If CenturyLink can bring it to northern and central Rappahannock, why can't Comcast and Verizon, with the same Connect America fund, bring it to the rest of the county? Bring us fiber to the home. It's safe, it's fast, it stands up better in storms. It's not ugly, and it won't radiate us. I actually think cell towers are a dying breed. They're coming with 5G, which is small cell towers on utility lines, which I don't support. But the old cell towers that loom 200 feet, they're a dying breed. They're the old technology. Why bring in more? When I talked to Tam Murray, who owns CWS, he knows nothing about radiation. Neither does Mr. Shoemaker at Piedmont Broadband. They don't own a meter. They've never taken a measurement. They don't know what they're putting out. With Tam Murray, it's whoever he rents space on his tower. It's their responsibility. It's not his. With Piedmont Broadband, he just doesn't even believe in radiation. He doesn't own a meter. He doesn't know what he's putting out. He bought the company from somebody else. Where's the responsibility, the public responsibility? I'm familiar with Piedmont broadband because our property is at the base of Bessie Bell, and they've taken over Bessie Bell Mountain, and they've already radiated our pond and half of our pasture, because I have a meter, I can tell. So I don't want Piedmont broadband or any broadband, Virginia broadband, taking over our mountains. They're worth more than that. And now we have a way to get fiber to the home. It can be done. Let's see.
If you wouldn't mind, I believe you've already used your 3 minutes. Could you please try to wrap it up?
Well, I mean, there's almost no one here.
I'm sorry, but if I start setting, I've given you at least 5 minutes already, so, and again, you've submitted written comments extensively. Just keep a fair meeting and keep it moving, so with all due respect, please try to wrap it up.
Well, as far as the Luthies go, it is not fair for them to have to deal with this and be terrorized with this every time a tower wants to come in. The only motivation for Piedmont broadband and for CWS is money. The only motivation. Do not think they're philanthropists. We can do better here. I object to the tower. I don't think it should be allowed to go forward. Don't even waste a hearing on it. They've been rejected twice, reject them a third time. They should have been rejected in Culpeper. They have a boondoggle in the town of Boston that they don't know what to do with. So there we go.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? If not, I will close the public comment. And we'll move on to the first item that has been advertised for a public hearing, and that is the Cliff Miller proposed text amendments to the zoning ordinance related to the category and treatment of driving ranges. Ms. Summers, would you mind, like to tee this up?
Okay. The proposed change is to take driving range and insert it with golf course and to require a special exception for that.
Thank you. At this time, I will open, actually, I don't believe Mr. Miller is here, and this is pretty straightforward applications. I don't think we need to make special consideration for the applicant, as it were. I will note that if this were to go ahead and be approved, we would still have another round of discussion about a special exception application. So at this time, I will open the public hearing for this zoning change Z1802-12. Anyone who would like to speak?
I would, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr.
David Connick from Stonewall District. I've submitted a letter, I hope you all have it.
We do.
I'm not going to read the letter, and I'm not going to repeat everything that's in there, because I think I probably go over it 3 minutes. But I'm a fast reader, but not that fast. What I want to focus your attention on, and I don't know if you can put up this map on the screen, no? Do you all have this? I think it was handed out, the zoning map. Well, I want to speak about the whole concept of the rural residential zone into which you're proposing to allow this. And the first thing I want to say is, as most of you know, I was zoning administrator when this ordinance was passed. I sat in on the work sessions, which we had sometimes twice a month in addition to the regular meeting. And I'd like to join in with what one of the previous speakers said, Mr. Junk, that you ought to think about doing that because you're not getting things done. But it wasn't by accident that a driving range was allowed only, the X is only in the commercial zones. It's in highway commercial, and it's in, which is quite a bit of Spurrierville, along 211, and then the general commercial zone, which is out here near where the bank is. It wasn't by accident that that was separated out from a golf course, because they're two complete, they have golf balls and golf clubs, and there the similarity ends. These are two completely distinct uses, and it shouldn't be allowed in rural residential or agriculture because it's too intensive of a commercial use, and it makes noise, it makes traffic and lights, signs with, how far it is, how far you hit the ball, all that stuff. Look on the web and see what they've got up in Ashburn. They've got a giant thing, it looks like a horse race track, but it's a driving range. It's got a great big pavilion and things like that. That doesn't belong in an agricultural zone, and it doesn't belong in rural residential especially. Rural residential's got a 5-acre limit. What's in the zoning ordinance now, the special considerations or the special conditions are 10 acres for this. So right away, that doesn't make any sense. But I want you to look at the zoning map. And you'll see that, the concept that we have, the concept that's in the zoning ordinance and the concept that's in the comprehensive plan is that we wanted to focus whatever growth and development we were going to have, residential growth and development around the villages. And as the county administrator, I spoke to him and I started to explain that to him. Guess what he said? He said, yep, that's planning 101. Right, you don't want to wrap up the agriculture zone by taking land out for golf courses and now this kind of commercial use. The comp plan says only convert land to commercial use if there's no other place to do it. Well, this would force that. And if you look at the map, there's only 3 little areas of residential, rural residential 5 around Sperryville. One of them's where you already allowed this golf course to be. So there's not going to be any rural residential there. And the other places where it's zoned rural residential are pretty much already cut up into small lots with houses on them. So what does that mean? If you allow this and allow rural residential to be used for driving range, first of all, who's going to want to live next to that? Nobody. It's incompatible with a residential use. And if you do what is requested, you're basically going to assure that what we did put in next to the village is not going to be used for residential like it was intended. So you're going to have to go out into the agriculture and conservation zone surrounding Sperryville. And don't forget, this isn't just for Sperryville. It's for all the other villages. And this is a terrible idea because you're going to allow that use in a residential zone which is incompatible with residential use, and you're going to drive the rural residential areas further and further out from the village center that exists in Amosville and Woodville and Flint Hill, and you're going to have a mess. And that's just the total antithesis of what the concept of the zoning ordinance was, and later when it came along, the comprehensive plan. We want to preserve our agricultural areas, and we want to focus the growth and residential development around the villages, and this is going to undermine that whole thing. And it's exactly, again, what Mr. Jung said and what I said in my letter. Instead of planning and thinking about how the county's going to develop and grow, the Planning Commission especially should not be reacting to what one person wants to do, and they come in here and say, well, you should change throw out 35 years of what we've had because I want to do it, and when I saw what's in the ordinance, I can't. Mr. Goldman, who appeared several times here, and now I'm going to be done, came up here about the Fletcher application, and came up here about a couple other things. And one time he made a really good comment. He said, in the federal government where he works, when somebody wants to propose a change, they submit some kind of a memorandum or some kind of justification that says 2 things. One, why isn't whatever we've got now, why it's not working? What's wrong with it? There's a problem, you identify the problem, and then you say, and here's my proposed solution to the problem, and here's how it's going to remedy the problem. Well, we don't have anything. Mr. Miller didn't even show up tonight to speak in favor of his own proposal, and I think that speaks volumes, because there isn't any justification, except exactly what I put in my letter. He wants it. That's it. You already messed up one time, and maybe not you, because I don't think most of you were on the board at that time, maybe Mr. Henry was, when you allowed this change for golf courses, which were then limited to 150 acres, to allow that in rural residential. That was a mistake. This would only compound it because this is a much more intensive use, and it's just not compatible with the village area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conner. Anyone else care to speak on this particular topic? Yes, sir, Mr. Irwin.
Phil Irwin, Flint Hill. Among the many objections that I've heard to the proposal of for a golf driving range is that it's for the benefit of one person. Let me rhetorically ask you a question. What special use permit has ever been issued that has not been for the benefit of one person or one corporation?
It's kind of how it works.
That being aside, among the many objections to the visual problems that would be associated with a golf driving range is lighting. I've never seen a driving range that wasn't brilliantly lit at night, because it gets dark around here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon a lot of the time. And lighting would be an essential part of any proposal, I would suspect. The Rappahannock League for Environmental Protection has been well underway now with a proposal, with a project, I should say, to retrofit existing lighting with some dark sky compliant lighting. And this, I think, would be really a real problem, because Sperryville has been the focus so far of the league's efforts, and this would really destroy it. I don't want a brilliantly lit driving range in Sperryville or in Rappahannock County.
Anyone else care to speak on this?
I've seen the pictures of the driving range in Akron, and it looks like Las Vegas. There's these plastic cubicles, all of this neon lighting, they're all hitting, it looks like they're yelling at each other, whatever. It's not like peaceful people on grass hitting a ball. It's totally different ballgame. And I don't think it belongs there, it shouldn't be snuck in. You made an exception to give him the golf course, and I think it should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Yes, sir, Mr. John.
I'm John Sperryville. Here again, this is spot zoning. You can call it what may, but it's spot zoning. The other thing with Sperryville is, you know, with the commission and the county, they don't pay attention to what's written down even in the commercial zone, the village commercial. If you look at it, you can see violations all over Sperryville. If you look at it. The other thing is Sperryville has a water problem. As I brought out the last time, the reason we don't put these golf courses in places is because of a water problem. Sperryville is all on wells. We have done studies in the last 20 years. You can see how the pump down of it is. If you want to pull rainwater or surface water, that's one thing. Mr. Miller is pulling well water from Sperryville. When he has, and when there's a busy weekend in Sperryville, Thornton River Grill runs out of water. Why? Because they're pumping water for the golf course. You could have passed something that said they could have a surface water. But no, when he puts in this driving range, there'll be another well there. Believe it or not, there's people that do live in Sperryville and depends on the water there. And again, it was not answered before, but this is just part of spot zoning. Again, if you had done jobs years ago, this wouldn't be a problem because planning is planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Yes, sir. Mr. Glenn.
Page 20, Jackson District. I want to make a couple points. On one, if it's the same use, how come you can find people that spend $1 million on homes adjacent to golf courses, but I can't remember ever seeing $1 million home next to a driving range? So I would just, somehow that doesn't seem the same. Second, why are we giving a man special treatment when he currently is erecting a sign in front of the golf course that is clearly in violation of the ordinance and doesn't have a permit? Now the sign's not up, but the frame's up. Well over the amount of. And finally, I must have missed it in the comprehensive plan, where our plan for Sperryville was to follow what Pigeon Gorge did. I mean, is that our attraction for tourism, is golf courses? Why don't we just go ahead and put one of those alpine sled things up on Turkey Hill? all right? Or when is Dollywood moving into Fletcher's property? I mean, is that really where we're going? That's how Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg started. They had the nice Smoky Mountains, and pretty soon, here comes, believe it or not, we got an aquarium, and we got haunted houses, and we got, have you been to Pigeon Forge? Is that really what we want? It's like Myrtle Beach in the mountains. But that's exactly where we're headed if we continue to give these entrepreneurs whatever they want. That's not what our comprehensive plan says. Please deny this thing. Thank you.
Hodge Miller, Hampton. We were very fortunate to live in a county that has beauty, and they've had people on the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission in years past that came up with a pretty good set of ordinances. I don't think they went quite far enough in some cases, but you want to promote tourism. What promotes tourism is Rappahannock the way it is right now. The way it is right now is because they haven't gone out and made exceptions in rural residential or agricultural zones. The beauty of Rappahannock is what brings people here. A driving range is not a fitting use, and I hope you'll vote against it.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak on this item? Yes.
Sharon Pierce, Piedmont, and I've had a little experience sitting at this desk and going over the comprehensive plan and listening to everybody. I just want to say this. I think that I have to agree with everybody, what everyone said. This is spot zoning. And if you want to look at the zoning ordinance, you need to do it as part of a deliberative plan that does involve the various districts, and you need to revise the comprehensive plan, bring it up to date. You know, when we did the last comprehensive plan update, I had a big discussion with John McCarthy about the boundaries of Sperryville. The boundaries of Sperryville were never meant to be fixed in stone. They were meant to expand, but they need to be part of a deliberative, again, let's just emphasize that, a deliberative process. I would ask you all to, if not deny, at least table and start that deliberate process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak on this matter? If not, I will close the public hearing and turn to fellow commissioners. Mr. Bannock, I believe this application is Yes.
Well, I always have an issue with taking agricultural land out of agriculture. And in the last meeting, I was concerned about the definition of a driving range, because most of the driving ranges I've seen are rather gaudy and big, and I didn't think it was appropriate. So I'm not very for making this change.
That's it?
That's it.
Mr. Byrd?
I'm conflicted about this driving range. On the one hand, I can understand how change it can seem threatening and a destruction of the natural beauty that is still here. The problem I see with it is that if we are going to have a tourist-based economy in Rappahannock, which is, I think, what we're well on the way towards anyway, we are going to have activities and opportunities for people to enjoy the countryside, bicycles, golf, hiking, fishing, that kind of thing. And as of now, we don't have much. And if we are to succeed with the tourist economy, this is something that has to be thought about, planned for, and effective. And I suggest that, as Mr. Junk so aptly put, that we need to have a good, long look at where we're going and how we're going to get there, and do it in such a fashion as to maximize the benefits and minimize the costs.
Bill?
Yes.
This end. Go next.
Yeah, a comment was made earlier about special people getting special grades. And Cliff Miller, senior and junior, have been in here over the 16 years. I've been on the commission for various things. Most of the time, I'm on the opposite side of their viewpoint. I remember many years ago, I don't think I was on the commission at the time, Senior Cliff came in, and I believe he was looking at a rezoning on all the land that he owned, basically kind of going over to the intersection of 231 and having a big residential area. And of course, that did not meet with very much fanfare, and all that changed. And he is dealing with, I think, some of the issues that Bill Fletcher was dealing with and some of the other large landowners are dealing with in the county is how to support these large parcels. And I think Mr. Miller, looking at his activities with the family over the years, they've tried many things. And some things are working and some things don't work, and they switch to something else, and they're trying to find a mix to keep the property together. When they came in here with the golf course that was mentioned before, that property had residential zoning, and people were concerned about water. And they did drill a well, they did drawdown test on the well, and they had a geologist come in, Vincent Day, and documented the drop in the well level and things like that. So the water source and supply and use and everything was documented there. And we pointed out that, it was my opinion, that the watering of the courses, as he outlined and we regulated in the application, was going to be a lot less water usage than if houses were built on the site. And that area right there has been a gateway into Sperryville. And I thought that it was better to have that open space as that non-power golf course there than to have a number of houses built there. And I was concerned about a net being placed there to catch the balls along 211. I was concerned about balls hitting 211, and they made some adjustments and said that a net wasn't needed. And they ended up building the course that you see there today. And I think it turned out very nice. And somebody asked back then, well, what's going to happen if this golf course fails? And I said either they can put a fence around and start grazing cattle, or maybe with some modifications they can make hay off of it again. The fact is that it became open space, it remained open space that produced some income, it was attractive, and it fit into the adaptive reuse of the old school there. And it is what it is today. Mr. Miller is one of the people behind the multi-million-dollar bike path along 211 to the school. With one phase, it looks like it's going to get approved. I was against that. I think that's a waste of taxpayers' money, and I don't see coming to Rappahannock to hike along to experience the views and enjoyment of Rappahannock. So I was against Mr. Miller there on that project. He came in with a barn that he wanted to renovate and use. I had concerns about that. It was addressed and things were done, and it's a venue now that people use. And I think it turned out to be an attractive building that is safe and has been an asset there to the people. So he's in the process of trying to do things and come up with things. And now, we have this driving range, and for whatever reason, I guess it fits into what he's doing. Not everybody wants to play the golf course. I'm not a golfer, and I don't understand golf, but I guess some people may not find it challenging, but I guess they can hit a ball in a straight line and see how far it goes, maybe more challenging. Same things here. You know, when that use changes, there'll be vacant land, you know, it won't be paved over, it won't be a parking lot. Not all driving golf courses have to have lights, it can be a daytime use. If there's no houses around it, it doesn't have nets. If anybody goes from Harrisonburg south to Dayton, right there around, up south to Stanton, right there around Bridgewater, kind of across from the big Walmart depot, there's chicken houses, and there's a farmer there that has a driving range. I guess it's a farmer, but you can see it right there from 81. It fits into that area. I don't recall whether or not there's lights, but it's really no facilities. The impact, usage of water, these kind of things are nominal. Two more things. Basically, if you look at the zoning in the county, where the zoning is, how much of it is, there's very limited amount of commercial, industrial, and those kind of uses scattered across Rappahannock County. And some of the properties that were zoned commercial, industrial, seems to be put at places that were hard to use, whether it be the Eileen factory or commercial in Sperryville across the river, that kind of maybe the Godfathers would agree and said, well, we don't like it, but we got to put it in. But we'll put it in places that maybe discourages use and makes it expensive to get to. So the amount of places to put in stuff is limited. And number two, there's a couple people, probably 2 people, maybe 3 people, that own a vast amount of the area in this county that's zoned commercial. And to try to come out here and find a 2-acre, 5-acre piece of commercial land for sale, I don't think you're going to do it. So a couple of people control the future and the direction of where this land's going to. I don't know what their plans are, but there's really limited area that you can obtain in a commercial, industrial type of zone that you can do anything with. So I think this is a benign use. I think we can work with it, and I'm in favor of working to work out something that doesn't have an impact.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Personally, I think it would have been cleaner. Some of the discussion we had last month was about having a definition and maybe having a major and minor, maybe leaving it where it was for these kind of driving ranges that we're hearing about tonight that are really commercial operations, and maybe allowing a minor one in the A and RR5. With that said, I'm not terribly concerned because it does require a special exception, which means you can assign conditions to it about the lighting, the water, the scope. We heard last week this was going to be a minor one, which could be appropriate in the A or RR5. So that's where I am.
Thank you. Mr. Parrish?
Well, I guess I agree with Ms. Mead mostly. He's not actually applying for a golf course yet. Obviously, it's coming. It's once a text amendment to change some zoning. Also, probably is a good idea to study this and to see where we want to go as a county. There's been a lot of talk lately about concerns of farmers not making enough money to hold on to their land, and what else can they do with their agricultural land other than actually farm it. And this is events and weddings and this kind of stuff is one of those things. It's obviously very concerning to have an ugly structure. The lights, all these things hopefully could be restricted if he did come in and apply for a driving range. The water thing is a big concern. I know when Mr. Miller asked for the golf course, they tested the wells. They had a test well, and it proved to be adequate, but my son actually was one of the people that were hired to stay up all night and periodically every couple of hours to test the level of the well. And it happened to be a torrential downpour that night, and it was at a period of time when there was a whole lot of rain. going on. And so I honestly feel like the water table was a little higher than it normally is in Sperryville. And he was asking for 10,000 gallons a day, and I suggested 5,000 gallons a day, and we ended up compromising at 7,500 gallons a day, which really is, I mean, who's going to check it? Just like most everything we do, you know, we pass these regulations, but there is no oversight there, and nobody checks it. So it's a concern, because there are houses in Sperryville and they do need water. And so that's a huge concern, and it's something I hadn't actually thought about here before until Mr. Jennifer over. So anyway, I don't have any real strong feelings. I don't know truly how important tourism is. I really don't know what farmers can do to make money. I've been trying all my life, and I just don't know. But I pretty much agree with what Ms. Mee said.
So, thank you. Well, I'd like to add a couple of things. First of all, I think, Mr. Henry, I want to acknowledge that I thought you were, I really agree with your commentary on this. I mean, we look at these things, they're not about the people who apply for them. We look at them in terms of their impact on the surrounding community. This is not spot zoning. We're not changing the zoning. We're changing a category of possible use, because right now I don't think there's any property that would allow the use as it is. So of course it's up to us to respond to changes that come up over time. And if that were all we did, I would understand the concerns, but of course it is incumbent on us to consider when someone comes in with a request as to whether it is reasonable to on those properties. I certainly agree with everybody who commented that we don't want lights, we don't want something that looks like the Ashburn facility. I would be opposed to anything even with a significant structure, and I think it's well within our right to restrict that. And just as we did with the golf course, I think there is a way of doing this that would make it the right thing for Rappahannock County. Very consistent with our comprehensive plan, calling for a focus on tourism, very consistent with what is happening in and around Sperryville and the developments there. So I think it is 100% consistent with the plans that we've had, and it's well within our ability and right and responsibility to restrict it in that manner. If we were allowing it by right, I would be very much opposed, but we are not. And with respect to the water, I know with the golf course, the big concern was the greens, because those were the only things that were being watered. I don't know for sure what Mr. Miller has in mind, but most driving ranges don't have greens, so I don't think there'd be any watering involved. So, I think there's a lot of valid concern, but I think the concerns can be addressed in a way that is consistent and allows that land to remain open, as Mr. Henry said, and be used possibly in a different manner down the road. So I think we can certainly navigate this from my point of view. At this point, I guess we'll come back to you, Mr. Bennett, if you would, if you're in a position to care to make a motion about this change. I'd certainly entertain it, or anything else for that matter.
Well, my motion would be to not deny it, and
So your motion would be to not make the change.
Yes.
There's a motion before, anyone care to second that motion? The motion fails for lack of a second. Anyone else in interest to move this item forward?
I'll make a motion that we move it forward with a recommendation of approval. if that's appropriate language, to move it to the category as requested.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. You have another motion?
Could we amend that to include limitations on lighting and water use?
I think
Or is that
matter
specific for this?
The matter before us is to get us to the point where we can entertain the application. This is, and maybe I might have made this comment earlier, all we're identifying by this move is that there are circumstances under which we could imagine this use being appropriate on land zoned in this manner. That gets us to the point of setting the appropriate controls when such an application comes forward for that use.
Sure.
So I certainly agree with the sentiment, but I don't think it's necessary for this time. But we still are looking for a second.
I will second Mr. Henry's.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Any further discussion? If not, all those supporting the motion to approve the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I abstain since I just don't want to vote on it twice.
And I may.
Nay. So we have 1, 2, 3. Why don't we do a roll call? So it's aye, nay, abstain, aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to new business. Again, we have several applications before us. And this evening, I want to reiterate that I think we'll go around and have Ms. Summers introduce each of these applications, and I think our goal tonight is to talk about completeness and whether there are questions or specific information that we would like to see from the applicant, and then ultimately whether we feel it would be appropriate to schedule a public hearing.
The first application is for Mr. and Mrs. Greenwell. They've applied for a special use permit for a tourist home located at 353 Erin Mountain Road. This is their second home.
And it's 46 acres. 40 acres. Currently zoned agriculture. Zone residential property.
Yeah.
That's gotta be wrong.
Yeah.
Under this new approach, we're doing, allowed to ask questions?
I think if the applicant is here, we should ask, yes, I would open it up to applicant, and maybe before you even ask the questions, we're working this out. I'm open to suggestions, but I guess I would once Ms. Summers is finished, we could have the applicant see if they would like to make any remarks, and we could certainly ask them questions.
The property is currently zoned agricultural.
And there was some question, I believe, as to whether it was on a right-of-way. There's a right-of-way through the property, but the property fronts on Erin Mountain Road, and so it is not accessed by a right-of-way. Is that correct?
It's 40 acres in size.
The driveway goes to that house only. Looks to me like.
So I believe the applicants are here. Are the applicants here? The applicants are not here. Okay. So we won't be asking questions directly of the applicants this evening, but we can certainly ask them and have them answer if we want to go forward. I believe this is in Hampton.
Basically, I think I'm familiar with the applicant. You see her? Huh? Oh, okay. I thought they were here.
Yeah, sorry.
No. But I'm a little bit familiar with this property. This was on the market for a long time. It's basically wooded. particularly the road frontage area is heavily wooded. You go into the property, you drop down over a rise, and it had a modest brick house there, probably 1,000 square feet maybe. And also, looking west from the property, it went down and walked out and had a pond there. It was very attractive, very private. Really can't see any neighbors from it. Property's on the market, and also on the board of equalization, we did there's a tax appeal on it, and we had an opportunity to visit it. So it's very private, isolated from the neighbors there. So in terms of the applications that we get like this, it should have nominal or no impact on the area, some of the other ones that we've had. So I'm in favor of moving forward with it.
Thank you. Ms. Mead, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, just comment. What I think we need before public hearing is, and it looks like they're working on it, is VDOT and the Health Department to know the size of the drain field, because we've been restricting them to that size. And then I had a question about the private, if it was a private road or not. So it does have frontage on Aaron Mountain. Okay, then that's not the issue. So that was my comment, those two things.
Thank you. I guess we'll just go down the line. I drove by the property. I wasn't able to get in. It was locked. The gate was locked, but I was able to see the frontage, and I agree with Mr. Henry's position that certainly from the road there's no visual impact. But I do think it would be certainly worth proceeding with a hearing before we make a final decision. Mr. Parrish.
Yeah, I went and visited the property, and it looks like about as good as you're going to get for a low-impact tourist home. It's private. The driveway only serves the house, looks like, and looks like a pretty quiet place. That's it.
Mr. Bennett, do you have any comments?
I don't have any issue with this application. I think it was a good application.
I agree with Mr. Bennett.
All right, so then I believe the right thing to do would be to entertain a motion to proceed with the publication of a public hearing unless there's still, I should note that I've asked for a legal interpretation of the circumstances under which we have the right, what the alternatives are to scheduling a public hearing. If the only alternative to a public hearing would be to deny, if we actually have the right to approve without a public hearing. Until I'm further clear on that, I would not intend to propose that we approve an application without a public hearing, as we've never done so in the past. So we may refine that as we go, but for the time being, my view is the only thing we would choose to do at this point is either deny the application if we were so inclined, or to propose to move forward.
I don't believe we can deny it. I don't think we're only deciding whether to hold a public hearing, and if it's complete, we have to hold a public hearing.
Okay. All right, well, in any event, I think we're looking at this point for a motion to move ahead with the public hearing.
I'll make a move.
A second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, it's a unanimous decision. Moving on to special use permit 180404, the Zook Gaddy Tourist Home. Ms. Summers?
This property is located in Chester Gap. They wish for a tourist home. The zoning of the property is village residential. And I believe the applicants are here. Yes, sir.
Representative of the applicants.
Okay.
Yes.
If you have any questions for them. They do have health approval, which I have submitted that. We do have written permission from the actual property owner for this application. It's a relatively small lot. It's located in Blue Ridge Mountains Estates.
All right, thank you. Maybe before we get rolling, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add to what's already before us before we move on to the conversation?
Yes, we rented 5.5 years from the owners, and and just enjoyed the view there and the mountains. You're right against the Shenandoah National Forest. And it's just a very short walk up to the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail used to come down Chester Gap Road. That was changed quite a few years ago. But yeah, so I'm a stay-at-home mom, and the owners have put forth the possibility of seeing if this could be made into a rental home. So yeah, so we're just gonna see if that's an option.
Like she said, we enjoyed staying there, but it didn't suit our purpose anymore. It's roughly about 12 to 1,300 square foot home, and at the moment we have 6 children. We need a larger home, so our move was very welcome, and they're just, of course, they're concerned owning the properties for continued income, and so it's why they're seeking this out.
And you live in Sperryville, right?
Yes, 70 Pearl Lane. Yes, my name's Tim, and this is my wife, Dawn.
Thank you. Let's see. That's you, yes.
I just had a couple of things that I think would be handy before we go to public hearing. I didn't see the size of the drain field. I saw that it had been cleaned, emptied, but I didn't see the size, so just if we could have that when we go to public hearing. I did see the note about the driveway would have to be moved, so would just like to see on the sketch where they're intending to move the driveway, and that it can meet the standards, that the parking not be in the front setback, and that it be screened, and then beat up. And I would just recommend talking to your neighbors because of the small lot size.
We have already, most people were very okay with that. There's some concern, the property right next door. They had, the current owners, 10, 12 years ago, had as a rental property, vacation rental home, and had a few bad experiences where people had parties and complained, and that got shut down. So they were not really thrilled about that, but something that we have put forth this time was that they would be able to contact us. Before there was no one to contact if there was concern, and we would be able to go and take care of it.
So you might want to supplement your application with a statement along those lines before we go.
Like she's saying, is they put forth that we would manage it, and so we'll be nearby on-call assistance. We have a good rapport with all the neighbors in the area there, and I've talked to all of them. Most in favor, except the one neighbor had some concern.
I guess when you work on this site plan that Ms. Mead mentioned, if you could work off of a plat that you could probably, I think probably this lot would be very easy to scale. Yeah, kind of a rectangle that you can square 300 feet by 200 feet, whatever it is, and try to be somewhat correct using the ruler in place and everything. And if you don't have an operating agreement between the owners, which sounds like you have,
Yes.
I think that would be good for us to see, not just...
Something in writing?
Yeah, just that you all doing this, so we can see not only commission, but whose responsibility it is to carry that thing. We got an application up there some years ago where the owner was basically catering to hikers on the Appalachian Trail. Now, what do you all?
No, sir.
Are you all going to be doing the same thing?
That's not the intention.
I mean,
The
it's like,
intention is for like a weekend rental type situation.
Because that met with a whole lot of opposition.
oh, I'm sure.
And it got voted down. So, I just wanted to see what y'all's plan was.
Not sure how one prohibits hikers from coming if they booked a place, if that's an interesting point.
I mean, that would be, it's just a nice option to go hiking if you would like to. If you're staying overnight, I'm not saying that it would be one for hikers.
I think possibly the cost per night is gonna prohibit most hikers. The intention is for income, so, you know, it's gonna be built for a family, you know, coming to the Blue Ridge Mountains to spend a weekend or 5 days or a week or that type of things.
Stan, are you finished?
Yeah, I would just add that I think the concern about the drain, the tank being under the driveway is a significant concern, and given the closeness to the neighbors, we'll certainly want to listen to what they have to say. I think picking up on what Ms. Mead said, if you go back and look at a couple of the recent approvals, although I don't know that we've formalized it, maybe we have, certainly Summers has that available to you. Whether you put them forward or not, you should recognize that we have developed a pretty regular series of requirements that we have been putting on these things, so you should at least be familiar with and comfortable with those, I think, if you going forward. That's all I had. Mr. Perry?
No, but how far is the trail from that house, the AT?
So from the front door, it's about a 5-minute walk out.
So you come out the front door and take a right?
Make a right, go out the road and
take a left and go.
And that spur, you
Right.
might hike 15 or 20 minutes till you hit the 18.
Right.
There's a lookout up there. It's really kind of neat, but so.
Because I think there's a little cabin around the corner from that house that does, it's like a hostel, that, isn't it, that's where they
Yeah, if you come out our gravel road, the Chesapeake Road, directly across on the opposing corner is a hospital.
Well, I don't think he's currently doing that anymore.
Okay. I know it's kind of like off.
To me, it seems like a good use, but it's not my business, so. Okay, thank you. Benny?
Well, my initial concern was the size of the lot, and the closeness of the neighbors, and not seeing where the neighbors have been contacted, so I was concerned about that and relieved that you had talked to the neighbors. Also, I didn't see how many bedrooms or how many people you're thinking of renting it to?
Well, it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, but they're very small.
2.5. So.
Yeah, 2.5. So I mean, it can still definitely be used for one couple as well, you know, if they're not people or family. So there's a large deck on the back, and then a porch in the front. It's just like, you're definitely in the woods. It's usually a very quiet neighborhood.
Is the hot tub functional?
At this time,
And they may do that or scrap that, I'm not sure.
Well, it's a nice looking house from the pictures. So my big concern was the neighbors and maybe creating some screening between the houses.
at this time, probably since the incident, there's been some understory that's grown up between us and the neighbors. During the summer, it's generally screened. And their big concern was the hot tub. That seemed to be where the action took place. At this point, it doesn't really look like that's going to be hard weather, so that could be a benefit, I believe.
If you think that's a concern of the neighbors, you might want to address that with them in advance. Again, that's the sort of thing that it's much easier to deal with those things before you're in here with an audience and on tape and in front of us. Or the next round. Is that all, Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Berger?
I have had considerable experience with a similar rental to this. I've found it to be a very easy and non-obnoxious use of property. And I think that of all the times that people have had tourist homes and rented them in Rappahannock County, there hasn't been one instance of a complaint or a problem that has involved the sheriff's department.
All right, thank you, Mr. Berger.
I move we advertise this for public hearing.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
If I could just recap, so some of the things that you want to see from us for the next time is, I'm sorry. Oh, I just had a question.
That's all right.
So you want us to address whether the hot tub's gonna be in use, and then, Mr. Henry, you had asked for like specific measurement of the property?
Well, it's showing where the driveway is going to be relocated to and how it meets the setbacks and how it can be screened.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And your operating agreement with the owners.
Yes, thanks.
Did somebody second the motion?
I believe we voted unanimously.
We voted on it?
Yes, we did.
Is there a second on it? I don't know.
Yeah, there was.
Yes, Mr. Henry
Henry
seconded.
seconded.
Thank
You
you.
got that? Okay. So, moving on to the next item, the preliminary review of PWSF number 1804-14, CWS 7 wireless tower, TM number 38, tax map 3830A. Mr. Bennett, I believe we're back in your part of the county.
Do we want to hear from the representative
Well,
first?
first, maybe we should also, I'm sorry, thank you. Maybe we hear first from Ms. Summers. Would you like to see this application?
This application was filed by CWS at, for 794 Woodward Road in Sperryville. And I believe there's a representative here from CWS to answer any questions. But this is for, as we said earlier, new tower.
Before we go around, do you like to add any remarks to the application?
Yes, that'd be great. My name is Hope McCrary. I'm with Community Wireless Structures, or CWS. I thought it might be helpful just to give you a little history on this application. I think some of you are probably aware, it was mentioned earlier, that AT&T had come into the county back in 2011 and filed 3 applications for 3 cell towers. One was in Sperryville, one was at the Rappahannock High School, and one was in the Boston area, on the Rappahannock side of the Boston area. Those 3 applications were approved, and AT&T went all the way through their permitting process, had building permits issued, and then went through basically a corporate restructuring, a failed merger, a redirection of their deployment objectives. They started focusing primarily on urban areas and essentially allowed those permits to lapse. Excuse me, several years later, we were approached by some folks living here in the county who were very disappointed that AT&T had never pursued those applications, that they again had just been allowed to go dormant. There was clearly a really strong and increasing need for cell service in the county. So we went back through a process, again, this was in 2014, of trying to secure the same sites that AT&T had approved and had under lease. We were successful at doing that at the Sperryville location. We were able to lease the exact same plot of land for the tower. We tried to lease space again at the Rappahannock High School, and the lease itself was turned down by the school board. So we did not proceed with that application. And we were not successful at getting a lease at the exact same location in Boston, so we secured an alternative site close by, which actually ended up being just over the line in Culpeper. And as it was mentioned earlier, we have since built a tower there. So that was back in 2014. We had essentially entered into an option to lease the space for the Sperryville tower. We did not proceed with our application at that time, over the past 3 to 4 years, because we did not have carrier interest, a service provider, one or more service providers who had expressed interest in going on the tower. And we certainly don't, from our standpoint, it doesn't make any sense to build a tower that's just going to remain naked, because we don't make any money off of that either. So in the last, probably 6 to 9 months, we were approached by Piedmont Broadband, who again is an internet service provider, not a wireless service provider, with an interest in that location. We heard that the county emergency services group was looking for a tower location in the Sperryville area, and was, I guess, considering building their own tower there. So we thought, why not utilize the tower that we would like to build for emergency services? We engaged with the county, and that discussion is still underway. The county's evaluating that proposal. The Board of Supervisors, I guess, is evaluating it. And in addition, AT&T began re-expressing based on their awarding of the FirstNet contract, which is their emergency first responders network. We knew that AT&T was going to be coming back into the county and likely would want that same location. So because of all that activity, we said, you know what, let's go ahead and start looking at this again. We started pulling together our application materials. The really good news is that since we started that process and since we filed the application, actually just before we filed the application, we've now had 2 national wireless carriers approach us with interest in both our Boston Tower and the Sperryville Tower. They're both actively doing due diligence on the property, which is, for these national carriers, is a lengthy process for them to vet these locations and do all the environmental work and engineering work and so forth that they need to do before they'll enter into a lease with us. But we're very excited that we have 2 carriers at the same time who, and we actually had hoped that we would have a letter of intent from one of them to turn in with our application, but we're not quite there yet. So that's the background, and that's why we're here now.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Okay, now back to you, Mr. Bennett.
Well, I have some concern with the application. One, she mentioned already that they didn't have a signed agreement with a carrier, and part of our code says that you need to have a signed agreement, irreversible signed agreement, and so I was concerned about that. Also concerned about the view shed. In the past applications for this site, it was a monopole, and this application is looking at a lattice work pole or lattice work tower, which I think is a little bit more intrusive into the view shed, so I'm concerned there. I'm concerned about the actual location and the impact and degradation to the value of the neighbor's property. The closest house to the property is not the, or to the tower is not the owners of the property, but the neighbors, and they're going to take I think a terrible hit in the value of their land and the ability to enjoy their property. So I'm concerned about that. So I'm concerned also about the, I think it's called the back feed or the transmission, the source of, our code says it shall not be backhauls,
I believe, is the provision.
That should be a buried, probably fiber optic as opposed to a microwave stream of information. So, and they've asked to be excused from that requirement. And there also has not been a propagation showing actually what cell coverage would be created by this application. But on the good side, I think we need cell service in the county. We need antennas for our 911, our fire companies, our rescue, and our sheriff's department. So I think there's a need, but I don't know if this is the best spot for it overall and the best structure overall, being a lattice tower as opposed to a monopole. So, those are my thoughts on this application.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd, would you like to go next?
I agree with Mr. Bennett. I think that the questions he raised would need to be addressed at the, from what I gather, we are in the process of deciding whether or not this proposal, should this,
To go to a hearing.
should go to a hearing.
And again, to put forward any information request that we might have for the
Yes.
applicant before we.
So what Mr. Bennett's questions and concerns ought to be put into that, or addressed at that meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Henry, would you like to go next?
Is the Boston site operational?
We just finished construction about a month ago. Virginia Broadband is going to go on as an internet service provider. They are in the process of getting their building permits. I think they're supposed to be installed. Originally, they were hoping by the end of this month, but I'm not sure that the county is caught up with them. And again, the same two carriers that have approached us about Sperryville have approached us about Boston. We'll be on both locations.
So I
When you
guess.
say operational, I'm not, it's not providing
So I guess
wireless service.
being a little bit familiar with your contracts, are you paying the landlord, the landowner rent yet?
Yes. When we break ground to build the tower, we pay rent.
Previously, you had the location at the school, which of course is not available today. It seems like maybe instead of doing this hodgepodge one site at a time, if that was viable before and you all looked into that, again, it seems that, is this going to be an application coming in the future for something around the school that kind of ties in the 211 corridor with the 522 corridor? Or is this just a piecemeal approach where there's revenue flow on 522 to justify your endeavors, but not on the 211 corridor?
Well, again, we're an infrastructure provider, we're not a service provider. So, and as I'm sure you're all painfully aware, that the national carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, have not been paying a whole lot of attention to the more rural areas of the country in the last few years. Their emphasis has been on the urban areas. So where they have now started to focus on some rural deployment, it's in population centers. So the town of Sperryville has some population here in the county. The Boston area has some population. We are looking at, we're not looking at anything near the Rappahannock, where we had hoped to put a site at Rappahannock High School, but we are looking in the Woodville and Scrabble areas to try to connect the network from Culpeper all the way up to Sperryville.
So your
522.
Your Boston location does not connect into the Sperryville location? I mean,
That's
it's
correct.
line of sight,
It's
right?
too-
It's still just line of sight technology?
It's too far. It's not, cellular service is not line of sight. That term isn't correct. But each cell tower, again, depending on height and topography and all the other issues that are specific to that location, each tower will propagate for a certain distance. And it's not a hard and fast, it's not like you can say the coverage here ends, the coverage tends to be denser near the tower, and then it kind of filters out. And we actually have just gotten some propagation studies done for the Sperryville site, which we will include in our application. But the tower at Boston, and if we build a 195-foot tower in Sperryville, that will not provide seamless coverage along 522. There will be a gap in the middle.
How far back towards Washington roughly would that provide service?
The Sperryville tower. The propagation studies that we just did, it's about between a 2 and 3 mile radius in terms of what I would call strong coverage, and then it'll be spotty depending on where you live and how the tree cover is, and again, all of that is a function of height. The taller the tower is, that we did the same propagation study that we did. We again looked at it all the way down past our Boston site to the big tall tower that Culpeper County owns, Cherry Hill Road in 522. That tower, it's a huge tower. I think it's 300 feet, and it's got a really significant propagation because it's really tall.
Your elevation, your natural elevation in Boston is what at sea level? Do you know that? And it is site
I can't remember.
860?
The one in
Sperryville
Boston, I'm sorry.
Sperryville is 850 or 60, yeah. I don't recall what Boston is.
That's substantially lower, I think, and Sperryville is substantially higher.
Right. You know, and again, height, coverage is a function of height. How many towers you want to end up with in the county is a function of height. Somebody brought up small cells and, you know, yeah, that's great in an urban environment, but no carrier is going to come out here and build out a small cell network because you literally have to have towers every, you know, quarter of a mile.
So I guess this is a question for the county administration or board of supervisors. We had a broadband committee that existed. What has happened there, and is it live, dead?
It got,
There's a meeting being scheduled for next week or week after, June 11th.
So that they've been in existence for some time now, right?
Right, working in cooperation with CIT, through the state, to help identify potential broadband avenues. It's a very difficult problem to solve. One of those is with these smaller WISPs, wireline, any opportunity you can get to the different areas. But that group is still working to try to find the best solutions.
So does that committee, will they be able to feed into us comments on how this helps build coverage network, or whatever terminology for Rappahannock County, that creates more of a framework here that can be built on or help?
Certainly ask them to provide comment.
where it stands now, and what I understand is it reached a point where CIT basically said Rappahannock County wants to go further, then Rappahannock County needs to put up some money, and I don't think anybody's willing to do that. So that's, I know they're having another meeting, but that's the last meeting. That's what came out of that.
I read in the paper where the school system has employed Chintel to come in with
the library. Some of the library, the $1 million that went to the library, some of that's going to go toward bringing the high-speed underground there, and then it's going to continue on to the school.
Anything else, Mr. Henry?
No.
Ms. Mead?
Thank you. I have just same concerns that we've been saying, that there is a need. However, I think the application misses a whole lot of the technical points in the zoning ordinance. And I don't know with this new zoning ordinance language that we're following that, you know, we deem if it's ready to be scheduled for public hearing. When you're dealing with cell towers, there are shot clocks and timelines you have to follow. So, you know, the application's been filed. I don't believe it's complete. And I'll say some of the things that I think need supplementing and getting to people that if we do authorize a public hearing, it doesn't mean we are endorsing the application. A few technical points. The application talks about rules will change July 1st, 2018, and I believe since it's filed before that, it would follow the current ordinance, but that would be helpful for us to understand when we go to public hearing. There's several places in the statement of justification where it talks about waiving standards, and I don't believe you can waive a standard unless it's built in there that the board can waive it. And those relate to landscaping, and then I just have some other sections, 170-108.8B, and then 170-108.5D1B. There are missing submission requirements. A lot of those things are addressed, but on page 11 and 12, there's lots of technical requirements that have not been provided. And then one of the standards is can't be more than 20 feet above the tree canopy, and it's not clear that it's meeting that standard. the picture, one of the pictures certainly looks like it's 20 feet above the tree canopy, so not sure how that's being met. Specifically, that's the picture on Woodward Road North. And then I just think it would be helpful to see, have you, the propagation looked at lower heights and what difference in coverage does that mean since it's not building off of a network? And are there any concealment options? Because they go up a long way versus the lattice tower. That's all I had.
Thank you. I pick up on a few of those points. I know, I don't know if you're prepared to talk about any of these tonight. I was curious specifically about the request for a waiver on the use of the microwave backhaul that, and the waiver of surety. To me, if we're allowed to ask for that, I would certainly want to see that. You mentioned a couple of the national carriers. I know they're listed here. I couldn't find them when I was searching for them, but I don't believe they are the two who are currently serving the county, Sprint or AT&T. I believe it's like T-Mobile and another one. Were they not? They were publicly identified, were they not?
T-Mobile we mentioned in the application because that's who we thought we were about to get a letter of intent from, and again, they were still actively interested. Second carrier, I don't think I should name because it's not far enough along, but.
Okay. Well, I think the point is this clear intent for this to be part of a comprehensive plan of coverage. I think that will need some work, and I think the request for coverage map would be very helpful. I would like to see I don't know if you're prepared to answer the question. I assume that the lattice, you switched to a lattice structure because it allows more for the same amount of tower, or what is it? What's the?
They will hold more gear, more flexible, and with current technology, the carriers have larger equipment, more equipment. Their needs are greater than they were 10 years ago.
And curious about the request to waive the assignability provision. Can you comment on that?
We sometimes sell our towers. We're a developer, and we need to be able to transfer the use permit if the tower structure is sold.
Thank you. I think I understand that the screening waiver and the driveway waiver you're asking for because you think in this situation they might be counterproductive in some way because of the existing road. It does seem a little odd. It's a gravel road coming up the mountain to make the access road to the facility a more significant road. I sort of understand why that might seem ill-advised. I think the propagation map certainly is key. When I look at this site, I see the desirability. I have to say, in many ways, this is a very good site for just about everybody, except unfortunately the Luthies. I think it's quite clear that they would be uniquely impacted. So I think if we actually looked at an actual balloon site and we could see what we're dealing with and just if there's minor changes that could be done to minimize that impact, either through the screening or hiding or maybe a slight movement in some way, I think a balloon test would certainly help that, and I'd certainly like to see you work on that. Those are my initial comments. Let's see, Mike, where are you with respect to going forward? Are we ready to? I'm sorry, did you not speak? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, I'm losing track here.
So this application, I believe, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is a little premature. The county is going to have some type of tower for our contract for the fire and rescue, and I understand that we would be allowed to put the equipment on this tower, but we may, there's a committee that's looking into this. Mr. Frazier here and Ms. Smith, I believe, are doing a really good job of researching, and so they're still in the process of doing that, and yeah, and there's a huge difference between a monopole and a lattice type in terms of visibility. But at any rate, I think think this application is just a little premature, and I would personally just like to see it tabled until we could do the rest of our research on maybe another site, and maybe not, maybe it wouldn't have to be this tall, so it's just my opinion.
I guess I'd like to add this comment. I guess from what I observed and heard, I guess the Board of Supervisors had a closed session that maybe this might have been a subject of. And I guess if Chris, if the Board of Supervisors did have that closed session and there are discussions which could be termed negotiations and things going on with the applicant, I guess that's kind of puts you in a precarious situation being here and voting or a recommendation that could affect plus or minus on the applicant's outcome and plan. So it's an odd situation that we've never had like this with any of the other cell towers applications that we've addressed. The board had entered into negotiations prior to the approval and closed sessions and things like this. It's very odd. So I don't know. It's legal territory, not planning commission. I don't want to see anybody take this and run with it in another way, like they've done with so many other things.
Well, I think the question, Ms. Mead touched on the question as to whether clocks have started and where this puts us with respect to this application. I mean, it has been submitted. I suppose, given that there's some things here that aren't specified, we could deem it incomplete.
My question would be a legal question to the applicant, hearing the components we think are missing tonight, and that if not addressed would certainly lead to denial. Are you willing to place it on hold and try to address the issues that are raised, which would stop the clock?
I mean, I think most of what I heard tonight that we should be able to address pretty easily. Yeah, we're fine with that. I mean, I don't know if we need to send a letter or something. I don't think we need a lot of time, but we could certainly, agree to provide supplemental application information if that's what, within a certain amount of time and not have the shot clock advancing for those few weeks.
I'll defer to the zoning administrator and the county administrator. Is that appropriate?
I don't, what I have seen in other counties, and just as a frame of reference, is oftentimes, because the county is larger and the staff is larger, this discussion right here is taking place with the planning department. And until the planning department accepts the application as complete, I don't believe the shot clock starts. So I'm not sure we have to really put anything on hold. I think if that's the purpose of this meeting, is to review the application for completeness, and you're determining that you
And if that is the purpose and they're shaking their head yes, then I think we can say it's not complete and not ready for public hearing. So, thank you, cleared that up.
So, any further discussion, guys?
Well, I would like to point out the code section 170.1085, paragraph 4, and it mentions the impact of the proposed facility. And on the creation of a convenient, attractive, and harmonious community and on the property value. And I'm really concerned about this impacting a neighbor's value more than the landowner's value. That's to me, very serious. I would not want somebody to impact the value of my property. I'd actually almost ask them to condemn my property and take it as part of the deal so I can move on with my life. I can find a place that I feel comfortable living when something like this comes into impact my life. So it's just my thought, but I think it's fairly unfair to the neighbors when you impact them like this. And the closeness of it all, you know, looking out your deck and looking right at the tower. So, that's my concern, and I don't know how you would rectify that, and it's in our code, so, along with the other things I brought up, so that's a big incomplete on my side of it.
So, I think at this point I'm open to entertaining a formal motion if anyone's prepared to make one. Well, I think the motion would be to resolve that the application is not complete and that we request this specific information that we've discussed. I mean, Mr. Henry, what were you?
So I'm just kind of trying to get my legs underneath of this new process that we're doing. So the first couple went along pretty normal, and we made progress and recommended them. So this new process that we're doing is basically, I guess you call it a work session, is what we're doing right now. Is this a work session? And we've got a preliminary application, and I've never heard of necessarily turning down a preliminary application. And it seems like we're doing a work session. So this application here, are we going to say you're deficient here, here, and here, come back with these changes for another work session? Is that what we're getting ready to say?
I believe that's within our rights to say.
Well, I mean, is that going to be like our normal procedure that we're going to follow with this format now?
We obviously didn't follow that format with the earlier applications, so I believe what's happening is we are seeing these applications earlier. In the past, the sort of completeness review and, if you will, acceptance has been handled totally by the zoning administrator.
Right.
And while I think we're still sorting this out, I think it's a valid question you've asked, and as I said, I'm not sure what the status of the application is at this point. But I think if we formally declare and agree that the application is not complete, that provides some certainty that otherwise doesn't exist. If we just do nothing, I feel that it's unclear where we are. So my preference would be that we take some definitive action, if only to declare in what manner we feel the application is not complete, and we ask that the applicant provide certain information before we go forward.
So, okay, we asked them for information and completeness. Are we going to have them here again as a preliminary application to discuss again?
I believe that is within our rights.
Well, yes, I mean, or does it go into a formal application? I'm just trying to, it's the purpose of what we're doing in these work sessions, to get to the point where we have a submittable application that is no longer a preliminary application, that then can be formally heard in front of the planning commission with a public hearing and all that.
If we deem the application complete, we have the right to schedule a hearing. If we deem the application incomplete, I suppose it's within our right to request additional information and still direct the zoning administrator to proceed with the hearing. But I believe it would also be within our right to declare the application incomplete and say we're not sure if we're going to propose a public hearing until we see the additional information that we'd like to see. I believe that our decision space includes all of those possibilities. Is that any objection to that, Mr. Zoning Administrator? You're nodding.
That's correct, yes.
I would just say, I think the intent is to make sure you're not advertising a public hearing for an application that's not complete and not ready to be heard and decided upon.
And if the deficiencies are such that we're not confident, we want to see the quality of those things before we move forward, then we should not go ahead with the public hearing.
Correct.
So what the public can expect from us on this particular application is that we have given the applicant comments, pointed out the deficiencies and items that are needed. So at some point in the future, we will have another preliminary discussion here, and then if it's a complete package, and then it will move on to being a normal, correctly submitted application.
I think the thing you're kind of getting at is the need for a public hearing or not, and is now incumbent on us to, if and when we're ready to do so, direct the zoning administrator or request of the zoning administrator to schedule a public hearing. If we're not ready to do that, then I think we ask for the additional information and we face that decision again in our next meeting.
That's correct. Or 2 meetings away,
Or 2
whenever
meetings,
they
whenever
have
we get
addressed it.
Now, what has been submitted now, this preliminary application, the time frame that has to become a totally correct submittal. Now, how much time do they have to work on this? Infinite? But we ran kind of into this with Fletcher being postponed, sickness, and action. So what length of time do they have in the submission process to complete their application? Is it unlimited?
Well, I would, if I may, I believe one of the concerns I had about the Fletcher application is that we did sort of table it indefinitely on the assumption that we would have that information before the next meeting, and then it didn't come in, and that was part of what put us in an odd state. What I would suggest is if we do move forward with a request and a determination that the application is deficient or incomplete, is that we put the deadline of our next scheduled meeting on the applicant to provide certain of the information. And at that point, if that application is not forthcoming, I believe we can say we won't.
I guess, Mr. Wright, Chairman, we can say whatever we want in terms of the deadline, but I want the time that is stated to be in correct with Code of Virginia. And I'm sure that there's Ms. Mead, is there legally by the statute an amount of time here that has to be?
It's what the ordinance says, and I don't know what this ordinance says about how long you have to deem an application complete or not. I don't know the Rappahannock ordinance that well. I think that as I understand it, as Mr. Curry has said, these are here before us tonight for us to say, are they complete or not? Which that is when the clock would start ticking on any of the applications as to how quickly you have to act. We're saying, I think what the majority of us are saying, is that this application is not complete and it's not ready for public hearing. The difference in the Fletcher application is it was accepted, it started going. This one would be, there would be no valid application.
So could it be construed that the ball, so to speak, is in the applicant's court?
Absolutely.
And that they will deliver us another application when they deem that they have satisfied our questions?
I imagine it would be a supplemented application, they would, yes.
And so there isn't a time constraint on that?
I think we've heard there's not one in the ordinance, so.
Okay, so that it is up to them at this point.
So I don't know that it's up to them if we do nothing.
So why don't we just vote to table?
Yes, I'm ready for motion.
Yes, please.
Yes, I move that the planning commission finds the application is not complete and does not advertise it for public hearing.
And you want to at least refer to the items in the discussion?
As the items stated throughout our conversation.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
I guess first of all, I just want to make sure I have all of the concerns, and will those be delineated in the minutes? I was trying to, just to be clear, like what I was hearing from everyone, some of the things were in my mind application deficiencies. Some of them were things that people, liked or didn't like about, a monocle versus a lattice, or, the things that to me would be addressed in a public hearing. Does that make sense? I mean, I think the things that are, clearly were not submitted with the application, though that's what we would intend to submit. We'll take some of the other comments into consideration and decide whether we want to make any amendments to what we're proposing, but it could end up that some of these things don't specifically get addressed. Does that make sense?
I don't see any other way forward. I think you're right in your characterization.
The other question I had was, you mentioned a balloon test or an interest in, can you be more specific about who you want to, what you're looking for?
You know, we have done this in the past on all of these tests. We've had a weather balloon stated, we've notified the public that it was taking place. I don't know if we have those protocols documented anywhere.
Well, I mean, we're used to flying balloons. I guess I'm just, there's nothing in the ordinance that says, you know, and again, some counties do require it, some counties require it with notice of a certain radius of property owners, you know. Since there isn't a guideline in your ordinance, you know, we can fly the balloon, but I need some guidance on what you think is, what you're looking for in terms of notice, or do you want to see it? Is it the community that you want to see it?
I think there should be, I mean, we could do that associated with the hearing. I don't know, Ms. Mead, do you have?
I think you should do it in accord with the 1 mile radius that you're required to notify anyway, as well as commission and board members. That's typically how those policies work.
That would certainly satisfy me.
Prior to a public hearing.
Thank you.
Sure. Moving on then to the proposed zoning ordinance amendments. I don't know that we've received the markup. Ms. Summers,
No.
would you like to update us on that?
I recently met with Art Golf and we finished up the amendments. So we'll get those to you shortly.
And then the idea would be to notice them for public hearing at the next meeting. Is that right?
I was gonna bring before you a draft to review before public hearing.
I believe that would be appropriate. Commissioners, have any other thoughts on that? So the idea would be that we would see the draft markup before we would schedule a public hearing?
I think that's a good idea.
All right, moving on to the comprehensive plan update. I believe when we last spoke, we had talked about the regional planning commission work.
I did receive that. I've compiled everything together and we just need to set up a workshop to start reviewing it.
I think we should, I don't know what the sentiment of the board is, but I would say, in my view, it would be ideal to stick for perhaps a Friday afternoon in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if others' work constraints would prevent them, or, you know, I think that's better than an evening session. But I don't know that we need to, I guess I would like to propose that the zoning administrator work with us to try to find the most convenient time where commissioners can meet and then we publicize that date. Is that reasonable for everyone?
Certainly. I would say the sooner the better. We're getting into summer and people are going to be on vacation, and so it's time is of the essence.
Why don't we work together and we'll coordinate
Absolutely.
with our folks to try to get that scheduled, and I do think it's important that we have to give notice.
Yes.
And meanwhile, what is that information in the form that we could it be distributed to us now?
Not yet.
Okay. And I think we want to, ideally, we would actually have it in our hands before we...
Sure, I would post it on board docs.
Great. Thank you very much. I believe that concludes the business before us. Is there a motion to adjourn? I'll second. Anybody who agrees, please stand up and go home. Thank you very much.